The smell of burnt caramel hit me before I even opened the car door. My brand new sports car, weeks old, still with that faint leather scent, now reeked like a coffee shop fire. Latte foam dripped from the dashboard vents, pooling in the cup holder, seeping into the stitching I'd spent extra to have hand done. And there he was, my brother, smirking like he'd just won something. "Oh, oops. I might have dropped my latte all over the interior," he said, stretching the word oops like it was a joke only he understood. The anger rose fast, hot, but I didn't let it out, because Dad was right behind him. "It's just a car," Dad said, shrugging, as if the thousands of dollars I'd saved, the weekends I'd worked double shifts, the pride I'd felt driving it home, meant nothing. That's when I realized something. They both thought this was funny. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even grab the keys from my brother's hand. Instead, I walked away, up the stairs, into my room. And at 11:43 p.m., while the house was quiet, I opened my laptop. A few clicks, a few signatures. The car's title, mine and mine alone, moved to a different name. Then I opened a second tab, the family garage access system. I revoked his code, and Dad's. And just for good measure, every spare key they'd ever had. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. But at 6:58 a.m., my phone lit up with a string of missed calls. My brother's contact photo, the one of him holding up a fishing trophy, stared back at me. Because the car wasn't the only thing he'd lost. The first call came, then the second. By the third, I knew he was pacing. I didn't answer. Instead, I let my coffee brew slow, filling the kitchen with the rich smell of roasted beans, the kind you don't spill on $80,000 leather seats. By 7:10 a.m., the text started. "Where's the car? Why can't I get into the garage? Dad's mad. Pick up." I set the phone down, watching the steam curl from my mug. Funny how quiet the house felt without his voice cutting through it, without Dad stomping behind him in righteous agreement. It had been this way for years. Their word was law, my space was theirs, my things were just things. But they forgot something. The vacation house wasn't just a getaway spot for them. It was under my name. Every key, every code, every gate, mine to control. At 8:15 a.m., I logged into the property management app. Click, click. Their access? Gone. I didn't stop there. The weekend reservation they'd made for friends? Cancelled. The wine shipment set to arrive tomorrow? Rerouted to me. By 9 a.m., the group chat was buzzing like a hornet's nest. "You're being childish, Dad. Return the house keys now, my brother." And my favorite. "This isn't fair." I almost laughed. Fair? Was it fair when they borrowed my truck for the weekend and returned it 6 months later with a cracked windshield? Was it fair when they used my credit card in an emergency and somehow forgot to pay it back? They didn't care about fairness, only about losing control. By noon, I had one last piece to move into place. I called the family storage facility. "Yes," I said, "empty unit 24 into my unit." No need to notify them. I'm the primary account holder. Because the truth was, this wasn't about the car, or even the house. This was about finally teaching them what ownership really means. And by sundown, they'd know it. By 4:32 p.m., the storm broke. I heard it before I saw it. The crunch of tires in the gravel driveway, the slam of 2 car doors, the muffled sound of my father's boots hitting the porch. Then came the pounding. 3 hard knocks. Pause. 3 more. I didn't open the door right away. I let them stand there, shifting their weight, imagining the conversation happening on the other side. Finally, I cracked it open. My brother stood in front, red-faced, his voice already rising. "Where's the car? Where's my stuff?" I took a slow sip from my coffee, the same mug I'd been holding all day. "Your stuff." I tilted my head. "Funny. I thought you said it was just a car." Dad pushed forward, his voice sharp. "This is petty. You're punishing family over a cup of coffee. That's not how we do things." "No," I said, stepping fully into the doorway. "This is exactly how you do things. I'm just playing by your rules." Their eyes flickered, a brief moment of uncertainty. It was the first time I'd seen either of them realize they might not be in control anymore. Behind them, a delivery truck pulled into the driveway. The driver hopped out, clipboard in hand. Got a shipment here for, he glanced down you. Two massive crates were wheeled onto the porch. I signed without looking at my dad or brother. Enjoy your weekend, I said as I closed the door. And don't bother with the garage code. I've already changed it. The lock clicked. Silence on the other side. Through the blinds, I watched them walk back to the car. My brother's shoulders were tense, his hands gripping the steering wheel before the engine even turned. Dad muttered something I couldn't hear. I didn't need to, because tonight, they'd discover the rest. And by tomorrow morning, they'd realize the car, the house, and the storage unit were just the beginning. This wasn't revenge. It was the end of their free ride. By sunrise, the phone was already buzzing. First my brother, then Dad, then Mom, her voice a strange mix of scolding and pleading on voicemail. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching the fog roll across the yard. It was quiet, the kind of quiet you only notice after years of chaos. At 7:14 a.m., a text came through from my brother. Just one word. Why? I almost laughed. He trashed my property, humiliated me in front of the family, and thought a single word could erase it all. By 8:03, the garage alarm went off. I'd been waiting for that. The motion sensors I installed sent a live feed straight to my phone. On the screen, my brother, standing outside the locked garage door, punching the keypad over and over like the code would magically give in to his rage. Dad was there too, pacing, checking his watch, muttering at him to just break it open. What they didn't know, the garage was empty. Everything, every tool, every collectible, every piece of furniture they'd stashed there over the years, was already gone. The night before, I'd called a moving crew I trusted. We packed it all up and sent it to a secure storage facility, under my name only. Then came the second blow. The vacation house key didn't work anymore either. Locks changed. Gate code changed. I pictured them pulling up the long driveway, trying to get in, realizing the place they'd been treating like their personal playground was no longer theirs to walk into. It wasn't about the car anymore. It wasn't even about the house. It was about finally drawing a line they couldn't cross. At 9:26 a.m., another message came through from my brother. This is war. I set my phone down, smiled, and took another slow sip of coffee. No, it wasn't war. It was the quiet reclaiming of my life, and he hadn't even seen the real hit yet, because by this afternoon, their bank accounts would look very, very different. By noon, the texts had slowed. Not because they'd given up, but because they were busy scrambling. I knew exactly where they'd go first. The family joint account. The same one they'd insisted I contribute to for emergencies, then conveniently forgot to tell me what counted as an emergency. They drained it before for ski trips, accidental shopping sprees, and once, unbelievably, to pay for my brother's proposal dinner. This time, though, the balance they were about to see would make their stomachs drop. The transfer had gone through at 8:59 a.m. sharp. Every dollar I'd ever put in, and a little interest for good measure, was now sitting in my private account, locked under a name they couldn't touch. At 12:37 p.m., my brother finally called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to him try, and fail, to keep his voice steady. What the hell is this? Where's the money? Dad says this is illegal. You can't just. The message cut off. Seconds later, a call from Dad. I didn't even bother opening it. I had something else to do. See, the car they were so obsessed with wasn't the only toy in the family. Dad had an old fishing boat he never used, but he loved to brag about it at parties. It was still registered under my name from when I helped him avoid extra taxes years ago. Guess who just scheduled a sale for cash? At 1:15 p.m., I sent a short group text to all of them. Check the driveway. And the marina. No explanation. 15 minutes later, the calls came in like a storm. Shouting, threats, guilt trips. All of it rolling in at once. But the best part? None of it mattered anymore. They weren't angry because I'd done something wrong. They were angry because, for the first time in their lives, they couldn't use me. And tonight, they'd find out I'd just removed my name from the deed of something much bigger. The evening sky was already deepening when I sat down with a cup of coffee and my laptop. Not out of habit, out of anticipation. There was one asset they never thought I'd touch. The vacation house. The same place my brother had demanded the keys to last week, calling it family property. The same house they'd used for every holiday while telling me there was no room for me to stay over. They thought they owned it in spirit, but on paper, it was mine. At 7:12 p.m., the sale listing went live. Photos, square footage, ocean view, all framed perfectly. Within 20 minutes, I had 3 cash offers waiting in my inbox. I didn't rush to accept. No, I let it sit. Because I knew the second my brother saw the for sale sign in the driveway, which had been delivered earlier that afternoon, the phone would blow up again. Right on schedule, at 7:46 p.m., the FaceTime request came through. His face was red, his voice shaking. You can't sell it. That's our house. You're destroying this family. I sipped my coffee. Funny, I said, calm as glass. You never called it our house when you were locking me out. In the background, I could hear Dad shouting, Mom muttering about lawyers, and someone, probably my sister-in-law, crying dramatically. It was like a live broadcast of a crumbling empire. By 8:03 p.m., the group chat was a mess of accusations, insults, and desperate offers to work something out. I typed 2 words and hit send. Too late. Then I did something that made their panic turn into silence. I forwarded them the calendar invite for the closing date. There was no more bargaining after that. Only the slow realization that the leverage they'd held over me for years was gone. And tomorrow morning, they'd wake up to one final twist they never saw coming. Morning light spilled across my kitchen counter as I buttered toast, unhurried, calm. The phone buzzed nonstop, but I didn't pick up. I wanted them to sit in the suspense. At 9:14 a.m., the movers arrived. Not for my house, for the garage. Every tool, every collectible car part, every family heirloom my brother stored there was loaded into the truck. He hadn't realized it yet, but the garage lease was in my name too. By 9:42, the truck pulled away, headed for a storage unit rented under my account. They wouldn't even get the location until I decided it was convenient. The first knock on my door came at 10:03. Loud, angry. I opened it to find my brother, hair a mess, voice shaking, flanked by Dad and Mom. You've gone too far, Dad growled. This is family property. I held up my phone, pulled up the official county records, and turned the screen toward them. Whose name do you see on that title? I asked, voice steady. Silence. Only the sound of gulls in the distance. Then I leaned against the doorframe, lowering my voice just enough to make them lean in. You wanted to play games with what's mine. I just played better. For the first time in my life, they didn't have a comeback. No guilt trips. No sudden claims of unity. They just stared, like the foundation they'd been standing on had vanished. I closed the door gently, not slamming it, and went back to my breakfast. Because this was never about revenge for me. It was about finally taking back what was mine and showing them that my silence had always been the most dangerous part. Tomorrow, the last piece of this would fall into place, and it wouldn't just end the game. It would end their control for good. The last piece arrived at exactly 7:02 a.m. A delivery truck, not flashy, but big enough to make the entire street look over. My brother was already outside, pacing in his driveway, arms folded tight. When the driver hopped down with a clipboard, my brother rushed forward, ready to block him. Delivery for you, the driver said, looking straight at him. Then, he pointed to the giant tarp-covered load being lowered by the lift. One by one, the neighbors wandered out. Phones up. Recording. The driver pulled the tarp away, revealing his own sports car. But not as he remembered it. The sleek leather interior, replaced with shredded, mismatched cloth seats. The pristine dashboard, scratched, warped, and coated in sticky coffee residue. A giant, laminated sign dangled from the rear-view mirror. Some things you can't repair, others you shouldn't have broken. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My brother's face drained of color, his mouth opening then closing. Dad stepped forward, muttering, "What is this?" But I cut him off. This is what happens when you treat someone's life like it's disposable. Consider it demurrer. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The driver handed me the keys, not to the car, but to the storage unit holding every single thing they once lorded over me. Paid for the next 12 months. In my name. No access for them. I turned, walked back inside, and closed the door as the murmurs outside swelled. For the first time, the silence on my phone wasn't theirs ignoring me. It was them realizing I was done.